As Congress weighs its own response to mass shootings and gun violence, Uvalde is also having its own reckoning. According to reports, the Uvalde School District announced plans to hire additional officers for the upcoming school year for each of its school campuses. This comes even after reports of the police waiting over an hour to enter the building as kids were trapped inside and killed by the shooter.
How is the response to this to hire more cops?
It is insane. It is not surprising, but it is insane. I've said before that I think this is the clearest demonstration of police ineptitude. They have, in Uvalde, they have a police department, a SWAT team. The school district has its own police department. Over 20 different law enforcement agencies showed up to the scene, and they still waited over an hour.
Was it really over 20 different
Over 20 different law enforcement agencies. I wrote a Teen Vogue op-ed on the topic.
It's astonishing to me that somehow people feel as though the response to this is more policing and more police presence as opposed to, especially because the police department has to some degree stopped cooperating with investigators.
They have. They've actively said they won't.
Yeah,
yes.
and really, I mean, they've embarrassed themselves. They've not covered themselves in glory in any way whatsoever. I mean, any situation where you have people handcuffing parents who are trying to heroically jump into the school to attempt to rescue their kids.
Handcuffing, arresting, tasing, pepper spraying is a shame.
It's one of the most disturbing, and like it legitimately like makes me emotional to think about what would happen if like cops were physically hindering your ability to go rescue your child and be protective of them.
And criminalizing you in the moment, having more anger and angst towards you than the shooter. They have their backs turned to the school as they yell at you and they threaten to arrest you. It's insane. Honestly, I think this is a slap in the face to people. I think an important note is this is a town that respects policing, right? This is a town that put 40% of its budget into the police department. And here, the police that they rely on, they were already comfortable. They want police at the schools. They have this. The police that they relied on not only didn't help their children, not only didn't save their children, but actively stopped them, stopped the other agencies that showed up. Border Patrol said they were baffled. They said they were baffled that they wouldn't let them in. So I think that this is an insult to the parents to do this, for this to be the response to this. Like, if anything, heads need to roll. I need to hear about people getting fired, districts getting overturned. I need to hear about restructuring, not giving more money.
Well, this is the perennial problem with whenever there's a tragedy, and in the wake of a tragedy, you do all these hastily considered policy proposals. Yes. The response here is absolutely not to have more cops hired, just as the response to the Parkland shooting was not to empower school resource officers to a greater degree, or to increase the numbers of SROs that are in schools. Agree. We see SROs as a significant source of juveniles getting criminal records.
Exactly.
And it's very unclear to me how people think that that's the appropriate response, when in reality, like this has not been well considered. And ultimately, like, we need much more of an investigation into what actually went wrong
100%
with the cops here. Because, I mean, this type of thing, like, the citizens of Uvalde should be able to actually rely on their cops. And the fact that they betrayed them in the moment when they needed them the absolute most, it's despicable.
Exactly. In a logical world, you know, you implement a method, you try something, you can't shoot people for trying, right? You try something, you believe in policing.
You can't shoot people.
Right. But you have this method in place. You say, okay, we're going to have three different police departments for this town. We're going to have all this in place. We're going to put our money here. And then when a tragedy actually does happen, also important to note, everybody involved are trained for school shootings specifically. The police departments in Uvalde.
They've gone through training merely months before, right?
Literally just months before. The students are trained for it. Everybody had trained for it, and the only people behaving incompetently are the police, right? But you have this method in place, and then it fails drastically, and somehow the response is, let's double down on that. Let's get more police. That would really help. Like, despite the fact that we had tens and tens and tens and tens of police sitting here chilling, backs to the school. Yes, let's do that. It's insane.
I mean, I do want to give. Do I want to give credit or do? I mean, it does seem like some reports have emerged where they were waiting for higher up instruction and for more tactical gear. And there's also the sort of interesting theory that I've seen floated, that since this town did have a SWAT department, there was some sense of, oh, we, the normal cops, ought to be waiting for the SWAT response because SWAT will be the ones that are most adept at handling this.
Except that would work as a theory if the fact that Border Patrol hadn't showed up. So the call, 11:30.
It didn't work. I can understand the logic, but then there's also this question of like, okay, well, when you give SWAT teams to towns that small, to what degree are you then disincentivizing actual normal cops from doing their jobs?
Right. And listen.
And do they need SWAT teams also?
That's another thing. I would accept that that rationale or believe it if I didn't feel very much so that it was just an excuse being thrown out now, because based on the facts, it just doesn't make sense, right? At 11:30 is when they get the 911 call. At 11:31 is when the resource officer drives past the shooter and follows a teacher. Between 12 p.m. and 12 p.m., that's when Border Patrol shows up. They are there, and 20 different other law enforcement agencies show up, and for over an hour, the local police would not let them do anything. So they had tactical shields. Border Patrol showed up with tactical shields, and they still had to wait for an hour.
It's really despicable police malfeasance, you know, truly.